Minnesota Vikings fans, welcome back to the Purple People Eaters podcast. He's Aaron, I'm Chris, and we're here to do what else? Talk some Vikings football. Now, obviously, we don't have recap from a game. You know what I mean? We're not going to go through all the preseason games. We're just not going to do it. So it'll be more talkable today, topical, talking, chatter, debate, all that type of stuff. What are some of the main things that go into this season, whether it's negative or positive? Obviously, we do have some lingering injuries. Irv Smith is done for the year. Do we have enough depth there? Do we have enough depth at wide receiver now that we could maybe do more three wide receiver stuff? A lot of the local media were hitting the panic button on offense. Do they have a point? Or is it kind of a reach considering, who wasn't on the field? Of course, the offensive line, especially the left tackle this year, that could get a little weird. We know the COVID issues. Clearly, Cousins and Cook stand out as the most important because of, how much they touch the ball, a quarterback and a running back, right? But we do have other guys, 5 starters in the lineup that are unvaccinated. Some people just assume that they're going to all miss time. I'm kind of in between on that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the new and improved defense and how long will it take. It's new, but how improved will it be? Will the random kicker route this year all of a sudden come together? That type of thing. There is a variety of stuff. If you listen to the show long enough, you know that we do sneak in some Gopher football to end the show, so look out for that. They put up a pretty damn good performance, against the Buckeyes. We're going to talk all about this. Of course, we're going to do the prediction for the Cincinnati game, and we'll just do a Viking season record prediction overall. Okay, so if this is your first time listening to this here Vikings podcast, welcome. It streams. It's available in a lot of areas. It streams live on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. You don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope-A-Dope and download the show there or listen to the browser if you don't want to. You can find it, like I said, in a variety of places. The Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, among other places. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. And late last year in the Vikings season, Aaron started a page called Living in Loserville. That's on Spreaker. Go check out that page. It's Vikings, Timberwolves, Gopher stuff, among other pods that he does as well. So check that out, Living in Loserville, Spreaker. At times throughout the season, it can be available there first, just to keep a heads up on that. And one more thing. If you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's got a different name, and those who have it know it just changed on you. But it's not AT&T now. It's the same company. DirecTV Stream. The prices start same, $69.99 a month. The best of live TV and on demand. All your apps in one place with access to over 7,000 apps. No annual contract. No hidden fees. And if you upgrade to the Choice or Ultimate package, you get free 3 months of HBO Max, which you can also enjoy regional sports networks with no additional fees. The last couple of years, those regional sports networks and cable has been messed up. You got that here. And if you go up to the Premier package, you get Showtime and HBO Max already included. That's DirecTV Stream. All right. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host, Aaron, and kind of check his temperature and see how he's doing now that, even though it didn't feel like today here in Minnesota, it felt like summer. But now that summer is winding down and football is here, my friend.
Yeah, it's finally back. And what a strange offseason. We talked a little bit about it. A lot of it just boils down to all the variables that are going into the season. You mentioned the vaccine situation, which is probably the most I would say, important of those variables. You don't know a good number of our starters are not vaccinated, how that could end up. Always injuries are to be put into play. So it's hard to really get a grip. And I think this is one of the first times going into the season I'm not, filled with absolute excitement. I'm a little bit more dread than excitement at this point. Just, there's a lot going on. We're going to get into in the show, but we've got, problems at left tackle, question marks at corner. We hope that they work out, but we don't know. Offensive line, defensive line looks good. So there's pluses and minuses here to talk about. But, just Zimmer's mood going into the season, it just doesn't seem the same. And hopefully it's, one of those, where a couple seasons it's been like this going in where you don't feel so great and then actually have a pretty good season. So let's hope that it goes the positive way instead of the myriad of negative scenarios that could possibly go down this season.
And the myriad goes both ways, but you're right. There's times where obviously there's only 3 preseason games, but that just happened, right? So there's been times where the Vikes have been 4-0, right? And you're like, yeah, dude, it's all coming together. Oh my! And then they shit on themselves. We've been a handful of years ago 5-0, and then the offensive line just fell apart, especially the tackle position. Remember, 6 or 7 guys. We were bringing guys off the couch. We were shipping him, in from Germany. Who knows? So you're right. It's kind of a mixed blend of stuff, especially this year. How, and it's something we'll talk a little bit about later in the show. That, what have they learned from COVID and what can they apply? Not just the Zoom meetings and all that, but not having a not even close to normal preseason last year, no games at all, and even the contact. And when it started was way different last year than this year. This was more like a normal run of the mill. But it did seem like they relied on scrimmaging and staying sharp and trying to get the timing together rather than playing them and take you to the ground tackling. So that, we're going to see if the whole league goes this way, because there's plenty of teams that did that this year. I mean, just ask Jefferson.
Well,
he's never even – oh, go ahead.
Right. Oh,
he's never even played in the preseason.
Exactly. But what I was going to say was around draft time, Chris, if you remember, these expectations were incredibly high for this season. And I thought they were, too high. And so I guess on the flip side, or the positive side, at least I think people are going into this season with a fairly realistic expectation of what this team can do. Now, that's not everybody. I know some people are really still high on them, and there's some people that are incredibly low on them. But I think we all it's a wait and see sort of year on so many levels with Spielman, Zimmer, and, guys like Barr, and what's going to go on with Griffin and, Cam Dancer, guys like that. We just don't really know what to expect kind of all across the board, except for with the exception of a few players. And some of those aren't vaccinated. So everything's kind of up in the air, but I think the expectations are right about where they should be considering all the circumstances surrounding the club.
Well, let's start with the offense. We'll get into the vaccination stuff here fairly soon. Some of the injuries have some silver linings to them because, they expect them to be within, 3 weeks. I was kind of talking to a couple of folks, and this is, we'll talk about this when we do the season record, but if we can get to 2-2 and have Barr and Darrisaw back, you know what I mean, and having Herndon be able to kind of fit in by then, the tight end that's going to play for Irv Smith, not the exact role, but that, and the defense, mounting together and whatnot. I think that's kind of, if we can get to 2-2, it'll help. But let's start with what the media has been talking about. Besides the vaccination thing, the media has been hitting the panic more than once. They're just tapping the shit out of that, triple clicking it, the panic button on offense, especially the local media, obviously. They've been freaking out. And I get it. I had more of a problem with some of the penalties. They talked about the lack of deep shots and this, that, and the third. I'm not ready to hit any kind of panic button when it comes to offense or defense when we haven't even seen them. I mean, yeah, if we don't have Jefferson and we don't have Cook and we don't have Thielen, then yeah, guess what? Breaking news, we're not going to be that good. So to me, it's kind of like, let's just give it a couple of weeks before we start to hit the panic button on the offense. What says you, sir?
That's a great perspective. I think we're going to be a lot like last year. Here's the difference to me, though, is where I sort of want to, I got my finger right over the panic button, is with Clint Kubiak. Now, he could turn out to be a savant offensive coordinator, but from what I saw in the preseason, take it for what it is. It seemed like a lot of running the football, a lot of conservative passes, and then the fact that he's never called plays in an NFL game before. Yes, his dad was one of the great offensive coordinators and involved in 7 Super Bowls and all that. But, it's that to me is one of the larger question marks as far as offense goes. And can he produce? What kind of limitations will Zimmer put on him? Are they really going to go to 3 wide? We'll get into that a little bit later. A lot of things, what about Cooks, carries, Jefferson, all these things go into the offensive coordinator. Do you lean on somebody a little more than you lean on somebody else? And what's successful? And, where's your intuition for play calling? Where's your experience? You can't have your dad on speed dial all year. So I think that's my biggest question mark offensively.
That I'd still say the offensive line is, because all that we have a lot of talent, skilled position, but if you can't block in certain games, we've seen how that goes. But you bring up a lot of good points just off play calling alone. You're right, that does play into it. It's funny because it's not like either of us just love to play Monday morning quarterback, and it's not morning, it's night. But we did talk about on one of our last shows, talking about the Vikes and starting lineups and competition at certain, positions. And obviously we knew left tackle was going to be something we needed to fill, having Reef Riley gone. Now, I like the Darrisaw pick. I'm all for it. Obviously, he's had some issues. We did talk about how why not put Cleveland over at left tackle and let Darrisaw and Cleveland battle it out, and then in the coming years we can choose which one to give an extension to. Like I said, Monday morning quarterback, sure, but that sure would be looking good right about now because we'd have depth. Now, in 2-3 weeks, if, knock on wood, Darrisaw comes back, maybe we're not going to be talking about that, but right now, Rashad Hill, we've seen him enough on right tackle to be a little scared. He's better at pass protection than run, but that's not saying much. It's not like he's league average per se. He's definitely not as good as Riley, so we're probably right away going to have to stick some tight ends over there and keep them instead of chipping with Irv and then maybe going out for a little quick route, which I'd like to see more in tight ends in general. We may have to stay home more. And then if we do the 3 wide receivers, well, that tight end's going to have to not be a threat maybe. So that plays off. Now, the offensive line, just to keep going, because that's offense obviously as well. To me, it's kind of interesting. I think Cleveland, he showed at right guard he was better than both sides guards that we've had last year anyway. Thank God Dozier's on the practice squad and not on the 53 for now. Knock on wood. No Samia as well. But, between the 2 left and right inside players, I think we're going to be a nudge up. I don't want to say a step up or majorly improve, but a nudge up from just horrendous. Let's not forget the last 3 years, PFF has one unit, the worst graded unit in the league, and that's the interior of the Vikings offense. So a line, I should say. It just a little bit more would be helpful, but then here we are with the left tackle. Sure, it's good that Darrisaw is not going to be out for 6 or 8 weeks on paper, but still, man, these first couple weeks could be rough in general.
You nailed it. Like, it's whack-a-mole on the offensive line. Now, you're right about Cleveland. I was screaming when that went down. Is like, we have a left tackle playing guard. Second round pick. I don't understand this. We can't move him over. That was a big thing that I pointed out. And then, we've still got a festering Garrett Bradbury situation now. We're all hoping for the best here, but 2 years we've seen him, and without a big improvement this season, that's going to be a bit of a liability. Obviously, O'Neal's going to be O'Neal, and we know who Rashad Hill is. Just like you said, we've seen him. We know we've seen him on the right. We've seen him on the left. We've seen him in spot play. We've seen him as a starter. We've seen Rashad Hill. We know what he is, so he's going to need some help. And now you put Cleveland next to him, and then we've got a question mark in Oli Udoh, which another thing where we all hope it works out for the best, but we don't know. We haven't seen. So we're back again with this fluctuating offensive line that we don't know how it's going to perform. Now, a nudge up would be great. We mentioned earlier while we were talking that, league average is what we want to go for here. If we can just get league average, but we're still going to face beasts like Akeem Hicks, a lot of new guys that are coming into the league for the interior pass rush. And I guess maybe if Bradbury ends up being the weak link, that would be an improvement.
Yeah, that would be.
But that's a lot of wishful thinking. So we're going to have to see how it works out. I know Darisaw just started practicing. Zimmer didn't really have a timetable on when he'd be actually ready to play, but it didn't look like anything, shorter than 5 weeks or so of conditioning and getting ready to go. So I think offensive line is a huge question mark as well. And I don't really know what to say except for we just got to wait and see. We just got to wait and see and cross our fingers and hope that it is a little bit better than what we've seen the last couple of seasons.
I will say just off, I hate to say depth, you know what I mean? Because it's not like it's tough to say because they're unproven players. But Wyatt Davis and Mason Cole, who's actually played at center and played two games at left guard. That's why I was actually thinking he'd be our starting left guard. Maybe it was also because of the Cleveland thing we talked about too. But Cole and Davis, as far as, okay, dude, it's week 6, let's try this out, are probably better than what we've had. But that's not really saying much. Another thing, just to your point, talking about injured reserve and all that, with some of these, Barr, Darisaw, and Westbrook, Courtney Cronin, who's really solid local here, ESPN and whatnot, she tweeted this: pretty good sign to not see Darisaw, Westbrook, and Barr designated to injured reserve. The belief seems to be that all will be back sooner than 3 games, that they'd have to miss minimum. Otherwise, they would have been put on the IR. So even if it's 2 out of 3, which I think Barr and Dede, just based off Darisaw's. I'm getting some crazy background noise, by the way.
Yeah, motorcycle went by.
Okay. So there is that in week 1. Well, we'll talk about week 1 in a little bit, but you're right. He even said, the practices, he's only practiced 4 times, and, it's going to take some time just to get his legs on it, especially with such a big dude. We knew what Dede, we know what Dede can do on the field already. Especially in a role player, but and we already knew he needed to get healthy. So we've had him in drills here and there, and he's been playing here and there. But at least we know that with Barr, we finally found out that it was his knee. But we'll see. That's why I think 2-2 after week 4 would set us up fairly decently. Why don't we stop ducking it and go right to the COVID scenario? Tell me your thoughts here. On COVID, because a lot of people are just saying these guys are for sure going to get it for the most part, and they just anticipate Cook and Cousins being out for a couple weeks. What are your thoughts on this? Because, I do tamper some of that for a couple reasons, but what are your thoughts overall?
Well, I mean, I guess as soon as they, put down the COVID restrictions and so on, you kind of knew this is how the Vikings were going to be. Just kind of the whole feel of the state and medical, the way this, it just seems like you could kind of know Cousins wasn't going to get vaccinated just by him being Kirk Cousins, but the other ones were a bit surprising, especially like, Harrison Smith and Cook and those guys. To have the least vaccinated team seems like a Viking thing to do. Look, I don't have a lot to say.
Something, Aaron. Right. We got to lead the league in something.
Yeah. what can you say, Chris? I mean, it's a virus. We don't know how it's going to affect. Obviously, you want to hope for the best and think, nobody misses any games. They're incredibly strict with their protocols, and they make sure that they don't mess up and that they stay healthy the entire season. But as indiscriminate as a virus is, it could, start with one guy and take them all out, or it could just be isolated. There's so many variables there. My thought is just, I hope these guys are incredibly diligent about their preparation and do not put themselves in bad situations. But so much is out of your control, playing against another team, being in close quarters, so on and so forth, that you just don't know how it's going to go. All you can really do is cross your fingers and hope that luck is on our side, because that's what you're going to need. And it's not like any other team here, Chris. It's like team leaders: Harrison Smith, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen. These are your guys that you've signed to long-term contracts. I mean, this is not like a third string running back or a second string linebacker, or even a starting, left guard or something like that. And this is the core of your team unvaccinated. Cross your fingers, hope for the best. I mean, I've said that twice, but that's really where we are going into week one.
Yeah, I'm not as gloom and doom as a lot of the local media. I do think that there is. Well, first of all, I got to admit, I'm not surprised at any of those guys you listed. And I think their biggest threat is going to be Church to catch COVID. Cousins, Cook, Thielen, Harrison Smith. I heard someone say, God, he went to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's in Indiana. No offense, grueling truth listeners, but, it's a Catholic school and it's in Indiana. The mentality of, the vaccination there is not that high. A lot of dudes are from the South that aren't doing it if you look around the whole league. I've heard Cook say some other stuff that doesn't surprise me one bit, that he isn't, but you're right. And throw Tomlinson, because as of right now, he's a starter. We'll see if Sheldon overtakes him. Throw Tomlinson in there too. So we have 5 starters that are unvaccinated. Now, obviously, there has been, 3 weeks? I got the stat right here. There's 3 weeks of tests worth in training camp, right? And the NFL previously announced that 68 players and staff tested positive for COVID, right? That's out of a little over almost 7,200, right? This is from August 1st to August 21st. Now, the rate of positive tests among unvaccinated NFL personnel in general was 7 times higher than the rate of course you can get it. And there's a good, vaccinated, you can get it. You're probably not going to, the chances are so much lower of getting really sick and all that type of thing. So, I think it's a major issue with Cousins and Cook. And like you mentioned, same with Harrison Smith. He's such a key piece. Without a defensive line last year, we saw how him and Kendricks, not to throw him in this, but were so important because they were still the ones making plays. Without Thielen, a guy in the red zone, look what he did in the red zone. You know what I mean? Him and Cousins have a great connection there. But Cousins and Cook really stand out just because they literally, on this team, carry the ball. Just, they have the ball in their hands, obviously, as a quarterback, but we depend on Cook. So it's tough. Now, a couple things, though, to the whole thing of these guys are going to get it and they're going to be out for multiple weeks. Well, we got to calm down a little bit. I think people are projecting the potential state in some of the states, Florida, Texas, that are having issues right now with hospitals filling up. And, Florida just had their record deaths in August more than in January, right? So I get it. But we can't project what our country could possibly be going through here this fall and winter like we did last year. We can't project that on this team. Now, college football, those guys still have to go out in the real world, right? They have to go to class now. They got to go get lunch, dinner, blah, 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 right? Whereas you can literally go from facility to home, church, facility, home, church, that type of thing. So, and not only that, last year, no one, for obvious reasons, no one was vaccinated. Not one person, obviously. So, and we didn't have a major breakout. Now, knock on wood, maybe it'll happen. And the argument is the Delta's a quicker spreader. No doubt about that. But I'm not doom and gloom because of, yes, we are the lowest or tied for the lowest, whatever it is now. Because, there's been one or two every week that have gotten it, but some of those guys aren't even here anymore, right? They were like, I'm going to get vaccinated just to make the team. But no one was vaccinated last year. We didn't have a major spread, so it's very possible. I think it can be a little overdone. Like today, I just heard literally 2 separate times that Cousins is going to be out. To me, that's a little overdone. Not only that, but I wish most of these dudes would have got it in August, because once you have the antibodies, it really decreases the next 4 or 5 months that you get it in the contact and all that. They're saying if you had it before and you get one shot, that goes as being vaccinated. So I think it's a little gloom and doom, but something you definitely have to worry about just in general. And last year was like, well, it happens. We can't really blame it. This year it's a little different scenario.
Well, in Kirk's defense, if there's a guy that's going to be as dutiful as possible about not getting the virus, I think Kirk is probably that guy.
He drives a minivan.
He doesn't seem to be the type of guy who you worry about. He's very regimented in what he does. So, yes, we kind of knew he wasn't going to get vaccinated, but at the same time, we also kind of get the vibe from him that he's not going to put himself in any kind of danger. Now, there's obviously the randomness of the virus and so on that could cause a problem, but Kirk's not my concern here. Cook, he's also a pretty level-headed guy. So I assume that they're going to take on the responsibilities with not taking the vaccine. And like you already mentioned, the vaccine's not foolproof anyway. Guys are getting COVID with it. And so it's really a crapshoot, Chris. And that's probably what's got Zimmer just, you can just look and he's losing hair by the moment.
One eye is just blinking, dude. It's tough.
I think at this point he's throwing his hands up, but you would like him, I guess, to maybe get vaccinated, but that ship has sailed. And so now we're in this weird spot about let's hope that things go well. And you're right. It's not doom and gloom, but it is one of those added variables to a season that's already got enough of them.
Yeah, and I love the whole. I continue to do my research. It's like, dog, you literally have a Zoom capability in the facility with a Mayo doctor, and you're talking about doing some more research. Like, come on, dude. Anyway, defensively, now last year with the injuries and whatnot, no Hunter, blah blah blah. We know the story, right? It was a bad defense. It was still top 10 on third down though by the end of the year. Zimmer's like, I'm proud of that. But other than that, it was garbage. He gave up so many explosive plays. We lost all those corners. So either way, some people are worried about the corners. Worried compared to what, though? You know what I mean? Not last year, obviously. So let's start out with the good stuff. The defensive line depth. I mean, you look at interior. You look at, as long as Hunter, knock on wood, comes back, we got 3 to 4 guys we can throw at or rotate or whatever on the right side. This defensive line is looking like a defensive line.
It is. The Tomlinson signing, to me, I was thinking, well, what are you going to do with him? He's a nose tackle. What's better than one nose tackle, 2 nose tackles? But now you're going to play them both. Plus you bring Sheldon back, which is the one guy I'm happy we brought back. And McKenzie, I guess, is another guy that I'm not upset about bringing back, but some of the guys we're bringing back,
that's the guy we wanted to keep, Alexander. Remember last year?
Yeah, and so defensive line, and then you've got some young players on the right side who actually have some potential with Wanham and Patrick Jones and the Florida State kid Robinson, although I think he's a little nicked up right now, but there's definitely depth pass rushing wise, and then Daniil obviously is a Pro Bowler, and if he can return to form or be better, that's going to be great. So I think that was probably the major malfunction in the defense last year, was when you had, I don't want to say their names, Stefan and the kid from Iowa, Johnson, in there. I mean, that's why you give up 6 touchdowns to the Saints. It was pretty obvious, and they tried to cover it up, but I think everybody knew by the end of the season that that's just not how this defense works. And Kendrick's getting caught up and eventually getting hurt because he's got nobody in front of him. And this year he's got a couple big boys in front of him that can move people around and get him free to make tackles. That's probably, to me, the biggest bright sign going into this season is the defensive line and how that can ripple through the defense.
And, I did get a chance to go to a practice for the Vikings, and I was lucky enough to land on the Broncos, scrimmage. And there was a lot of live one-on-one. And although once you get to the second and third level, they're not going to tackle you to the ground, just know that they were tackling running backs to the ground within 5 yards either side of the line of scrimmage. Of course, you're not going to hit the quarterback, that type of thing. But Pierce and Tomlinson, but especially Pierce, was just pushing people back. There was 3 blocks on the line. 2 of them was Pierce. 1 of them was Tomlinson. And I had seen, I'd watched them play because I watched Baltimore a fair amount during a lot of primetime games. But I did go back, and they talked about the sideline to sideline comparatively, how big he is. And that's no joke. I saw him chase down and make a tackle behind the line of scrimmage on the sidelines. A couple other sideline plays. Pierce is the real deal. I'm really excited there. Now, obviously, we play so much nickel that having Barr in Kendricks is a damn good starting lineup. Where is Barr? Is it going to be ready? Is he going to be ready in week 2, week 3? So there is a little, what do you your thoughts on linebacker? And also, who's going to fill in, say, week 1 or in the classic 4-3, with the third linebacker? Who do you like there? What do you like about or what don't you like about our depth there? Because there's been a lot of talk about, they're pretty much screwed if Barr doesn't play.
That's it. I love the starters. I like Barr. I like Kendricks. I like Wilson's gone now, but Dye maybe will be the third, possibly Surratt. But I like the starters, but there we go, Chris. It's the depth at linebacker. Vigil apparently can play a little bit. We'll see how it goes in the season. I think he'll probably start for Barr, but we'll find out on Sunday. You got to stay healthy there. Barr's got to come back and play well, and then you'll have a decent linebacker core, but nobody can really get hurt. I thought Chaz Surratt showed a little potential in the preseason, and I could tell because Zimmer was riding him really hard, wasn't happy with anything he did. He'd make a play, and Zimmer's like, yeah, well, he messed up 2 other plays.
Anyone can make that play. It's right in front of you.
That's how you know Zimmer likes a player. So he's getting on him a little bit. Surratt could probably play a little bit, but I see him as more of a middle, like backup to maybe Kendricks, but maybe Barr. It's hard to tell what's going on after the starters linebacker wise. So they've got to stay healthy and play well. Obviously, Barr won't be here for 2 to 3 games, and we'll see who can come in and play his spot. But it'll be Kendricks leading the linebackers again. And I think we might be getting to a point with Barr, Chris, and I don't want to, this is another knock on wood, but, maybe he's reached a point where his body's going to start breaking down. He's been injured the last 3 years for a significant amount of time, last year entirely. It might be time to be looking for that third linebacker, and I just don't see him on the roster. Let's see how Troy Dye plays, but I don't think he is the caliber of Barr at that position.
Yeah, I think it'll be a combination of Dye and Vigil, or however you say his name, Nicky. Yeah, and you know what? When a guy's built like that, with that, like nobody can run this fast, this big. Well, there's a reason for that. And your body's like, dude, we can't do this. I can't keep doing this. And maybe that's caught up to him. It's happened in plenty of other sports, especially basketball and football, though. So, yeah, hopefully not. But, yeah, there is some we'll see, there. Secondary-wise, obviously Harrison Smith is the only returning guy in the starting lineup as of right now. We'll see. Or the youngster from last year who came on down the stretch, by the way, definitely came down, down the stretch last year. But, and I'm speaking of Danzler, obviously, but, although I think feast or famine, I do think that Breland is that. Just watching those that scrimmage, it was like he either gave up a play or made a great play. I think it'll be a combination of both. I know you're talking about the Kansas City. That is Kansas City. You do end up getting a little hurt there from them in general. But I compared to what we had cornerback wise last year, a lot of people are talking about Patrick Peterson. Oh, he's not as good as he was and all that. I'm not looking for him to come in and be the number one ranked cornerback in the league. I'm not looking for that. But the experience of Alexander Breland and then the youngster and then obviously Pat P and what we did at safety, no one can tell me that we're not going to be upgraded at that position, considering what we had out there last year, which was really, really bad.
I like the secondary on paper. On paper, I like it. I think Peterson is going to be serviceable at worst. We saw what Zimmer did with Terrence Newman. I'm not expecting him, like you said, to come in and be top corner in the league. I expect him to just do his job well. Now, he got beat a lot last year in Arizona, and I don't know, it could have been attitude, could have been, maybe he's wearing down, maybe the defense doesn't suit him. But if you got to hope that Zimmer can get something out of him. Breland, like you said, feast or famine. He gets beat a lot, but also makes plays. But I think that's better than what we had last year. And then Mackenzie Alexander, you got to hope that he stays healthy and that he can continue to play at least as well as he did last time he was here. He's really coming on. And then with the whole cornerback exodus, ended up leaving with them, but came back at the right time. But I don't see who's going to play behind him. Is it going to be Harrison Hand? Is it going to be another corner that's going to, spell him? I don't see any depth there at the nickel corner, and it's pretty important in this defense. Xavier Woods, I'm almost scared of how little we've heard about him. Either he's fit in so well that he's just, being taken for granted, or, is flying under the radar or something like that. I just don't hear anything about Xavier Woods except for the mention that he's the safety now. And
he communicates well, is what they say.
Communicates well, and Harrison definitely gives him a vote of confidence, but that's just to the media. But I think overall, like you said, it's probably a vast improvement on last year's secondary. It's just going to have to be wait and see of how it really fleshes out. I mean, obviously adjustments will be made. If Pat's too slow, then, we'll move the safety over. Or Breland's gambles too much, then we've got to, deal with that. And, but I think as far as talent wise and experience wise, it's a vast improvement, and I think should fit in pretty well with the defense. If you put the whole defense together, get a pass rush, which we think we'll be able to get, especially in the interior and with Daniil, and then you had a run stopping with the linebacker. Kendricks will chase the ball all day. I think you got a good chance of having serviceable corners, and we'll get later in the season. We can talk about 1-year deals and how that's going to flesh out. But you train these corners. Hopefully they can be in the Dantzler. Let's talk about him for a little bit. I don't know what's going on with him. He showed a lot of good things last year coming down the stretch, but then he gets caught jogging in preseason and hasn't been the same since, as far as what we hear about him and what the coach's expectations of him are. But I still think he's talented, and he'll have to play if there's any injuries in the secondary. So let's hope that, it's maybe he was miffed that they brought in 2 corners and took his job, and maybe he's pouting a little bit, but he's got to get over that and be ready to play it at any time during the season. And I think with that, the 3 corners that you're primarily going to use, throwing Harrison Hand as the 4th, are better than they were last year and could possibly be a very good set of corners if things go the right way.
Yeah, and I'd throw in Dantzler just because we don't know where his mentality is, and we haven't barely even seen him play. So I don't know. I'd say we have 5 corners that I don't know about Hand either. I guess he's shown potential, he's shown whatever. But man, I'm actually pretty damn happy with the offseason moves defensively, no doubt about it. A couple other items. Back up QB. They cut your boy from Washington, the Huskies. What are we doing here? What are we going to have to bring in someone week 4 some vet that got cut? Are we going to bring in Cam? What's going on? You're muted.
I just said, I don't know, Chris. I mean, the last thing I wanted to see happen is what happened, and that's bringing back Mannion. And we talked extensively last year about if you're going to have a backup quarterback, at least have some upside to him, to where either you're taking a shot on a guy or he's got some life in his arm and can play. Mannion is great at holding the clipboard. I'm sure he's great in the quarterback room. He can hand the ball off and possibly manage a game, which I guess is what you're kind of hoping with. And I think they just brought him in for familiarity of what we do around here. But it just goes back to risk aversion and not taking risks. I don't want to see Kellen Mond on the field this year if I don't have to see it. I'd rather him just sit for the entire season. But I got a feeling with Mannion there, and let's say he has to play an extended, 2-3 game stretch, at some point you're going to get to Mond because Mannion is just not going to put you in a position to win. And you can't give Cook 50 carries a game if you intend to have him all season. And so it just seems like a Band-Aid or a stopgap, Chris. I don't really understand the logic in it. There's a lot of guys that were on the market that possibly give you a better chance to win than Mannion, but I guess, the way this front office is, it's if you've played here, then it's home to you and you can keep coming back and it's a big family and blah, blah, blah. And it's just not conducive to winning football games. And if you know that there's a possibility that the virus could hit or something like that, you'd think you'd take a more advantageous attempt at trying to find someone who could win you games, unless secretly you're thinking that Mond can win you games and you just need to give him some time. Let's hope that's the logic that they're taking, because I think we know that Mannion cannot, you play him 4 games straight. I say, you got a good chance of maybe winning once, possibly twice out of that. And I just don't like that much. What logic do you see in how they handled the backup quarterback role? I mean, Jake is gone. Had a lot of hope for him, but it just didn't pan out. I was the same way with Samia. Didn't pan out. And then they got rid of Nate Stanley as well. So now you're down to Cousins, Mannion, and Mond, and I don't want to see Mond on the field.
Well, Mannion is on the practice squad. I do want to preference that. Kellen Mond does have potential, but you're right. I said when we drafted him that this might be a good guy to let sit for 2 years potentially. So yeah, I would have liked a better third quarterback. And I understand some guys will throw out vets that you're like, dude, you realize what that costs though for a backup. Like, so there is that combination. Like if you don't have a starter, or if you got a starter where it's like he might be the starter, he might not be, then you'd have to bring in something, fairly veteran, solid, whatever. So yeah, I'm not crazy about him. I mean, I like him on the practice squad, so that still gives us a chance of maybe upgrading minorly a veteran during the season if that came into fold. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. Like I said, at least he's on our practice squad. But I don't want to see Mond either. Now, luckily, beyond COVID issues, Cousins is very durable. Once again, knock on wood. So we've done the kicker. We've done a lot with kickers, right? Now the random kicker route. Will this be what finally just magically brings it together? Just randomly. I will say this: the punter over the last 6 years has been a pretty damn solid punter. So we'll see there. But yeah, what do you think, man? I mean, it's punting or kicking, but maybe I'm willing to say maybe this random kicker route is going to finally click and we'll have him and he'll be okay. But I just kind of assume that I'm going to have to close my eyes anything more than 35, 38 yards.
For another season. Correct. Close your eyes, cross your fingers, look away from the TV, do whatever superstitious thing that you've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. Continue to do that. Greg Joseph, is that his name? This is another kicker. And then Riley Patterson, hopefully, I don't know if he even made the squad, but he was supposed to be competition. And it's pretty much common knowledge now that anything, 45 and up, possibly 50, that it's out of this guy's range. Now let's hope he can make every extra point. Let's hope he can make every 35, 36, 42 yarder. But that, again, in Vikings kicking land is a crapshoot. So I do have some I'm very nervous about the kicking situation. Now let's hope that you're right. Just some random kicker comes in and breaks the, dare I say, curse, knock on wood, of Viking kickers. But it's not a name you get excited about. It's not a name that you go, okay, we're good there. If you brought Dan Bailey back instead of this guy, I think all of us would be like, okay, well, Bailey again. It's just nothing there. And the punter, you got rid of Cole Quit or whatever his name is. For whatever reason, you got rid of him. He couldn't punt the ball. Then you bring in this other guy that's also does nothing for you. And, we're not guys that are going to sit and,
he's been a top 20 punter in the last 6 seasons now, according to something.
I'm not going to, obsess about the kicking game, but in this franchise, it's, a big part of our existence,
who we are,
unfortunately. So, the whole trajectory of Zimmer's coaching in the NFL is placed on one kick, the Blair Walsh kick. I think that just really did a lot for his coaching career. And they were on the rise, and then it misses that field goal, and all of a sudden
he was a stud too, heading into that game. He was killing it, dude, just knocking them through. It was cold. It was cold, Aaron.
It was cold.
Cold.
Left hash. It was all everything.
28 yards.
It was good.
Than, 25.
But yeah, it's up in the air there. Let's hope that it's good. Listen, Chris, I'd be happy with make every extra point and make every reasonable field goal.
Right there. I'm with you there. Reasonable field goal. That's well said. Reasonable field goal. And just make the extra goddamn points, please. We know they backed it up. We know they backed it up, but they didn't back it up to the 38. This isn't. It's dead on. Come on. Come on.
And then, as far as like the rest of the special teams, you're going to go with what? Kick return and Smith Marset.
Yep.
Probably. And then punt return. Probably Osborne. Something like that. And, any improvement in the return game is going to be welcome, as opposed to last year, like 40 some yards or something like that. Total return. It's like you got to have some juice back there. And I think Marset can do that. A little early to be high stepping. Did you see that in the first preseason game?
Yeah, I did.
A little early.
He dropped a bunch of balls in practice too. I was like, this guy's up there high step. Don't dance. Don't dance at this practice. You drop balls, okay?
I like where his head's at though. Make plays and
he took that shit 8 yards out and made something out of it. So I'll give him credit there.
Yeah. So special teams will be a thing. Even the coach of the special teams to me gets me a little nervous. He just seems like he's just happy to be there. And
right.
Quickly before we move on to maybe predictions or whatever, but
yeah,
I guess my biggest pet peeve of all of this is that it just seems really insulated, within the franchise. You've got the son of the ex-offensive coordinator now being the offensive coordinator under Zimmer. You've got Zimmer's kid now being co-defensive coordinator under Zimmer. You've got a bunch of guys that you've never heard of, like the special teams guy. You've got Andre Patterson, who's obviously tied to Zimmer's hip. You really don't have any new blood circulating coming in and out of that coaching staff.
I would say that. I'd say the
okay, Keenan. All right, sure.
I like that upgrade.
That's a fair point. But other than that, it's just starting to really seem like the walls are closing in a little bit there. And, maybe nobody wants to be offensive coordinator under Zimmer. I don't know. That's a speculation. But it just seems like things are starting to get very insular, starting to get very connected there. And I'm not going to say nepotism and all this other stuff, although that has been brought up in the media. I just think it's awfully strange.
And the NFL is the worst at it too, like inner hiring too. Now, of course you'll have success in other leagues if your dad was, a coach, but when it's your dad hiring you, that's a different ballgame, right?
Mm. So I'm not going to say whether it's good or bad. That's to be decided throughout the course of the season. But it's a little bit strange, I think, going into the season this year, especially when hypothetically and it may be possibly true that Zimmer's on the hot seat, Spielman might be on the hot seat. A lot of hot seats at Winter Park if they were still at Winter Park.
Yeah, that's true. It's an E-town now. E-good. Okay, anyway, moving on to two different things. We'll predict the record for the season. Just kind of walk our way through some of that. We won't necessarily go game by game, but just kind of think about it, kind of break down the schedule a little bit. We got some tough road games, no doubt about it. But let's start with the road game, high noon on Fox. Vikings, Bengals. We are a 3-point favorite. The over/under is 48. Trey Waynes will not play. Of course, we got some in-between guys as well. Another corner is actually kind of banged up, and their stud young quarterback sounds like he's going to play, but he hasn't played much since that. He hasn't gotten much rust off, so you wonder, how that's going to work. When I look at this game, I feel like when you look at the corners without Waynes too, Ely Apple, I think he played for the Giants for a while. He's been pretty mediocre. Awuzi's pretty solid. He's coming off a rough year last year, but who knows? COVID kind of throws into that. But I look for Thielen and Jefferson to kind of get it in. You know what I mean? And have a good game. They do have, left tackle wise, Hendrickson. But they don't really, beyond Hendrickson, they don't have a big pass rush. And they haven't been that good at the run. Now, they do have some new bodies in there, not just, on defensive line, but in general. So maybe that, we've talked about how it's going to take us a couple weeks. Maybe that'll, I don't know. But I expect early on in general, I expect to lean on Cook even more than we do without Irv and the left tackle scenario. But when you, don't have a team that's strong against the run, and they can't necessarily generate a lot of pass rush. Now, you don't need a lot of pass rushers to generate usually on our offensive line in the last few years. So I'm trying to keep that in perspective. But I do see the Vikings getting the W in like a grinded out, ugly game. Maybe one team jumps up by 10 and then it stays, pretty close. But I'm going to call for like a 23-20 win for the Vikings.
That's a good assessment. I see a grinded out game, a defensive game as well. And since we're not gelled really defensively, and it's hard to tell what Cincinnati's got going on. I think Burrow's a little rusty. You do have some playmakers offensively on their side with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon, and they've got some playmakers, and they've got Burrow if he's on and they're at home. I'm going to say slug it out, grind it out game, probably something around 24-17, something like that. But I got to give the edge to the Bengals on this one just because it's on the road for us, and our starters haven't seen the field, and I think most likely, Cincinnati will come out and jump on us pretty quick, and we'll work our way back into the game. And if the game was 5 quarters, we would have won it, but I see it being a 4-quarter game, and I see we lose it in something like 24-17.
Well, there is overtime, Aaron, so you never know. We may get that 5th quarter, and the only way you can end up 5-5, Aaron, well, not the only way, but the easiest is 8-8-1. So keep that in your memory banks. So obviously, a couple things that stand out about this schedule is we finally have Seattle at home. They're having offensive line issues, so that helps. No, but just finally, we've ranted the last chunk of years about that, and it's like, come on, dude. But our road games, at Arizona week 2, back-to-back road games, just the start's not fun. Baltimore and then the Chargers back-to-back on the road. San Francisco on the road. We obviously have to play Chicago. But even this, to end Green Bay and Chicago. We really end on some Chicago, Rams, Green Bay, Chicago. I can't help to bring it back up. If we're 2-2 after 4 and we get the rust off of Darrisaw and he can actually play, and then Barr comes back healthy, we're probably not going to rush him back, but he comes back healthy. Like you said, the defensive unit, like you've mentioned a couple times now, getting that going. If we can be 2-2, I'll feel pretty good. That's obviously just, not an exact quarter now of the season because they had to add 17. That plays into those 1-year deals too. It's not just prove it. A lot of players did 1-year deals because they know the cap's going to go up in the coming, next year and years after that. But yeah, man, those road games, we got some tough road games this year, no doubt.
Yeah, if we, like I said, if we lose to the Bengals, it's not woe is me. It's not it's all over. It's just
Right.
it's the first one out of the gate, and 2-2 out of 4 games I think puts you in a good position. Whether you beat Seattle or you win a game you shouldn't, or you lose a game you shouldn't, like against Cincinnati, you're in a good spot. So I like where your head's at there, and going forward for this season. I don't know if we're making season predictions here, but
yeah,
we talked a little bit off air. It could go either way, very good or very bad. And I guess I'll put my foot in the ground here and not be on the fence with it, because on the fence to me would be like 8-9, 9-8. I'm gonna say that this is the year that all of the smoke and mirrors disappears and we end up 5-12, 6-11, something like that. Now on the bright side of that, the next GM will be able to have a pretty good draft pick, and the next coach can pick the next player that they want out of top 10 players available in the draft, and still have the talent here that has been accrued over the years. But I think this is going to be a tough season, and a lot of perspective and a lot of patience is going to be needed to get through it. But
that sounds like last year, which is not necessarily a good sign.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to look as I see it realistically in my head, that it's one of those anything that can go wrong will go wrong, a Murphy's Law type of year where it all kind of crumbles. But it always, what's the saying? It's always darkest before the light, something like that.
That didn't motivate me. Anyway, I guess I'm on the fence. The way I look at it, and I'm glad that you went all the way because we had a conversation. You said something, you kind of went off it, then you went right back to it, and I respect the shit out of that. I really do. But here's the thing. We got a tough schedule. Last year we played 9 playoff teams, so it wasn't like some kind of run-of-the-mill bullshit schedule. We had a tough schedule. We had some tough road games. I think it's a step up this year. And we almost made the playoffs with all those injuries, with the horrible defense. We almost made the damn playoffs. So for me to say I can't quite go, and by the way, a 5-win season, I think we'd be top 5, top 6 at least. Or not at least, but I'd say top 5 pick at that point. Maybe we'll find a way to do something under the table like the Timberwolves and lose the pick. Who knows? But anyway, I still look at it like, man, we almost had a chance in December at the playoffs with a team that clearly was struggling on defense. Now, in the last part of the season, we were able to offensively finally not have them in the box. We finally had enough explosive plays, and Jefferson, obviously, that we said that down the stretch, like finally we can get 8 out of the box every once in a while. Not the whole time. They're going to start 8 in the box. But, we finally saw them having to go away from 8 in the box was my point. So I'm going to say 9-8. I'm going to say 9-8. I could see 7. I don't know if 6, but maybe 7-6. I could see that. I think the highest is 11. But I'm going to go 9-8 for the Minnesota Vikings season. Any last words, sir, before we shut this thing down?
No. Can we brush over the Gopher game?
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah,
thought
yeah, yeah.
that
Forgot that you said that. Yes. Good call. Go for it.
obviously, I'm going to ask you a question. The hit on Mo where he went down, is that a clean hit?
To be fair,
I feel like there was an
he didn't
extra
really go
tug that,
down. He didn't really go down on a hit, though.
I mean, judging by the Ohio State player, how he approached Mo after Mo was down, he said something to him. And considering that Mo was kicking their ass up to that point, to me, it just kind of smacked like, you got to do what you got to do to win a game if you catch my drift. And I thought the Gophers played well, had a chance to win until Mo went down. They were running the ball like crazy, and it seemed like they had momentum, although Fleck doesn't really believe in momentum. But they end up losing 45-31. I thought it was a respectable showing, but I'm not one for moral victories. I thought you could have won that game. I thought they probably should have won that game. I think they died down the stretch. But I think it's a good showing for the way the season is headed. I feel like the next part of the schedule, the next 5-6 games are winnable games. I don't think you really run into a test until you get to the end of the season with Wisconsin and Iowa. I think Iowa's going to be pretty good this year, and I think we're on the road in Iowa, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's going to be a tough game. I got high hopes for the Gophers as long as they can find somebody who can run the ball. And I think Bryce Williams can run the ball if that's who they go with. But I think they got some young kids too. But overall, I was impressed with their performance. You got any thoughts on it?
I'm glad that you brought that up. Now, I got to disagree with you. Maybe you're thinking of a different hit, but the Iberhand didn't have much contact. He actually took a weird step. That's how he got hurt. He didn't. I'm not going to say it was 100% non-contact, but it kind of was because he had spin off of it and he just landed on his leg weird. So it wasn't a bad hit or anything like that.
Well, I'm not to interrupt, but I'm talking about the hit where he was injured. He did spin off the guy, but then the Ohio State kid grabbed his leg. Now, I'm not sure if that's the injured leg, so I suppose I should know that before I make these kind of claims. But I thought that he grabbed his leg and did a little extra
He went
tug.
to the ground, and once you're on the ground, the play's over. So you're saying some guy came in later and did that?
No, I'm saying during the hit. What I saw was Muhammad came off the, right side, made initial contact, tried to spin out of it. The guy held on to his leg. He went to take another step with his free leg while the Ohio State player had his other leg, and then kind of gave it an extra tug. And then when Muhammad probably cried out or something that he was hurt, the guy stood on top of him and said something. We don't know. Probably we'll never know what he said, but he made it clear that was the last play Muhammad was going to play. So I don't know. Just from the looks of it, it seemed like there could have been.
To me, it looked like the step did it, not the tear. But who knows? Either way, let's not spend too much time on that. But one thing I'll say, Potts looked like he had a little extra pep in his step when he was out there. Of course, we've heard about Wiley. Like you mentioned, Bryce Williams has gotten a lot of carries over time. Go back to 2018. And then Kai Thomas is another guy. And I think we got to remember, Ibrahim was a third string as a freshman and then came out of nowhere. Now, Ibrahim breaking the tackle and knowing that's huge. Just being a team leader, obviously, in the bowling ball that he is, the breaking the tackles, we're going to hurt, losing that. But also just get back to the line of scrimmage or get that 2 yards. That's all you got, instead of a young guy that might go the other way with it, right? There's a couple things that stand out. Offensive line had back-to-back stupid penalties that I really didn't like, and then gift wrapping that defensive touchdown, because then you had to play that 2-touchdown game, which is very tough against one of the most, explosive offense. But I do like how we played against that. Like you said, I'm really the next handful of games, just to finish my sentence there, I really want to see at Colorado and at Purdue to really shape what this club can look at like. But it matches up like 2019 almost, but maybe a tad harder. We'll see where Indiana is by the time we get there. But to close with Iowa, at Indiana, and then home Wisconsin, it really feels like Penn State, Iowa, Northwestern, in Wisconsin to close 2 years ago. So that's kind of interesting. But I'm pretty high on him. No doubt Mo hurts, for sure. But I think that by committee, or even like you said, Bryce, he 2 years ago or 2 years ago, he had that monster game against Wisconsin. So the fact that year that we're talking about, 11-2 year, 2019, we now have the sixth depth, all six players playing. So we have one of the best offensive line in the league. And you could see it, like you said, we were running on them, no doubt. So I'm pretty high on them. I do got to I want to see those Purdue in that other game at Colorado just to kind of make sure that I'm seeing what I'm seeing. But it looks like they could win anywhere from 8 to 10 games, no doubt about it. Thanks for for bringing that up too. Any last words either way?
No, it's a great point you brought up about Tanner with the scoop and score. I mean, that's kind of always been his thing. I don't want to, put it on him. Left tackle did kind of brick on that, but he did hold the ball a little bit longer. And for a senior, you can't be holding the ball that long. And, he doesn't have Ottman Bell. I understand that. He doesn't have all his parts. And it's the first game of the season, so we're going to cut him some slack. But, yeah, the season looks bright for them. I agree with you about Iowa or about Purdue and Colorado. I don't know what to think of Colorado. I got to watch more of them, but obviously, if you say it, I'm going to take your words with a little bit of weight and see how that goes. But it's lining up for a good season, and let's just hope that they stay healthy the rest of the way. And losing Mo at game 1 is a lot better than losing Mo game 6 or game 5 when you've already established offensive continuity and so on. So I think they have enough backs. PJ's always pairing to spare. Well, let's see what you got, PJ, and let's see what you got for running backs. Can you fill that spot? They don't have to be as good as Mo, but you got to get production.
And it's funny because we didn't have Adam Bell, but I mean, and you could tell sometimes, but overall, I mean, those guys that were in there, it basically, we're safe to say that if we have Fleck as a coach, our wide receiver room's going to have talent regardless. We're still looking for a Brown Stevens sighting. We did get that tight end. Span Ford finally made some plays. Hopefully we see more of that. But that Dylon Wright, the Jackson, I mean, we look pretty good at that position without our best guy who's got great hands. So I'm pretty happy. All right, make sure you swing by the Living in Loserville Spricker page, and we'll see you next week. Go Vikings. Peace.